Robin, thank you so much for joining us. Just to begin, I wanted to ask your impressions of the conference, what you've picked up in the first few days here.
The conference has been excellent. I've really appreciated the fact that there are so many people from so many places in the world who are really focused on climate and community-based adaptation.
And what are some of the big themes or big lessons that you're drawing from this conference?
So one of the big themes is that climate change is already happening, and happening, I think, at an alarming rate in various places on the planet, and that we are still struggling with our capacity about how to respond.
And where are you seeing this? I know that you work in the Arctic. Can you just give a couple of illustrations as to how it's happening and how communities are responding?
In the Arctic, or what I've witnessed here in Vietnam?
In the Arctic.
So in the Arctic, climate change is happening twice as fast as other places on the planet. So our temperatures have already increased 3.5 degrees Celsius since 1975, which has led to a cascade of ecological effects, including decreased Arctic sea ice, thawing permafrost, so most of the soils in the Arctic are permanently frozen and they're now melting. And so what's happening for communities is accelerating rates of erosion. And the thing that's most disconcerting is that the technologies that we have that we think can protect people in place are no longer able to protect communities.
And how are the communities themselves responding to this challenge?
The communities are doing an outstanding job of advocacy and organization, and many of them have decided that relocating their entire communities is the only adaptation strategy that will work to protect them for the long term.
And can you just give a couple of examples of how this work is happening? How are communities going about this process?
So the community that I'm working with most closely is a community called Nutok, and they are Eskimo, Yupik-speaking peoples who live along the Bering Sea. And they have, one of the things that they've done, which has been, they've been doing for quite a while, is documenting how climate change, the ecological change, is impacting their communities. So there have been significant public health effects. There have been effects on their infrastructure. And in 2003, they went to the U.S. government and Congress and got a land exchange authorized by Congress. So they got title to the land that they voted on to relocate to. And that was in 2003, and then the community started, the Nutok Traditional Council started a relocation process in 2006, and they are now working with about 25 state and federal government agencies on their relocation process.
And has the relocation been a success? And presumably there's some big cultural and physical challenges of moving an entire community.
It's still in process, and so I think one of the lessons from the Arctic is that we don't have the governance capacity in the United States to address something that was unexpected and unplanned for, such as a community relocation as an adaptation strategy to climate change. So there have been enormous statutory barriers to the community relocating. They're going to a place where there's no infrastructure, and they need to build health clinics, schools. It's a roadless, there are no roads there, so they need to have an airstrip. But you can't build, for instance, our statutes say you can't build a school unless you have 10 children in the community who will be enrolled in school, but no families are going to move there if there's not already a school in place. And so it's those sort of statutory barriers, not to mention that none of the state and federal government agencies have any technical experience in relocation and what it means for an entire community to be moved from their current location to a new one.
And just to draw the connection between your work in the Arctic and the conference here, what are the lessons or what are the themes that you're going to take away from this conference and that are going to be relevant to your work, do you think?
So one of the things that I think is really critical for us all to be thinking about when we're talking about adaptation is that it's got to be a dynamic process. A lot of the projects that are talked about are static, meaning that they are developed in response to what's happening now. But again, based on what we've experienced in the Arctic with these accelerating feedback loops, there needs to be more of a dynamic process so that communities have a range of options as salination. That was one of the, I think, the big takeaway messages for me in doing the field site visit that I did is salination of groundwater is an enormous issue for people's ability to have drinking water, not to mention the impact on their agricultural crops. And if we don't start thinking about things like that are slow ecological processes like water salination as a disaster, I'm not sure where the funding will come from for real innovative responses.
Robin, thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been really interesting.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.